It's good morning here, wherever you are. It's whatever. Falling into silence. I'm here again. Just to say that I come to this in many different states, so it's not like I'm always in what might be considered a meditative state. I come, as no doubt you do, with all sorts of feelings going on. So I just had the need to say that. I'm just thinking whether I have something to say before we start, or whether we just wait for the silence and see what rises. So bear with me in this, and as I try to work it out myself. I have a coffee with me today. That's not usual, is it? So indicates some sort of change. Okay, so this week I was looking at some TED Talks. If you don't know TED is, if you put in Google or a search engine TED Talks, you get a whole range of usually 20-minute talks on a variety of subjects. It's a very interesting, stimulating way for me to engage with a subject. So one of their top talks was by a woman called Bolte Taylor, and she did her talk on a stroke of insight. It has to be watched to truly see how she explains her experience. My interpretation and what stayed with me from watching it is, whilst suffering a stroke, she began to experience what she describes as the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. I can't recall anyone describing this as graphically as Jill. So she talks about the right side being the side of the brain that is connected to everything, and it's in the moment. And the way I remember that it's right is because she talks about being in the right now, being in the right moment. And as someone who follows teachings on oneness, I was very interested from a neuroscience perspective, but also a neuroscience scientist having the experience, which is what comes across in the talk. So as she's having this stroke, and she doesn't quite know she's having a stroke, she begins to experience this oneness and everything being one, even to the point, I think, where her hand blends in with the wall. And then she talks about the left side of the brain, the part that's the I am, so that once we say I am Jack, I am Gordon, I am whoever, I am a professor, I am whatever, we stand in the left side of the brain. So we're standing in separateness, we rise as a separate identity, and that part is the bit that I guess the self talks about, worries, what you need to do, and it serves a practical function, but at times, as we all know, it doesn't always serve, which is what I was speaking about last week. Jill contends that we can choose to stand in the right side of the brain at any moment, and that's what inspired her to give her TED talk. It's not, like most things, for me anyway, as easy as that, although it's a good thing to keep in mind, and particularly in the right mind. So I do think it's possible to feel that connection, and that means giving the right side of our brains time. She talks about giving more, exuding peace from us and creating a more peaceful world. And given everything that's happening in Europe with Ukraine, we certainly need more peace. But of course there are wars raging in Yemen. I don't know what's exactly happening in Syria, but there's disturbances across world Libya, and whilst our minds are focused, well, some of our minds, I guess, in Europe are focused in Ukraine, we have to remember that some people have been living with conflict and war for a long time. I have now spoken, let me see what that says. I've now spoken for 5 minutes, so I should fall into silence for my own sake, if not yours, and see what happens. Shall we leave it there? do appreciate this for myself. I know it sounds a bit daft, but by switching the camera on and thinking somebody else might be watching creates, for me at least, the experience of stillness. So if you are watching, thank you for being here.